Welcome back to the woods. Find a quiet place, maybe a cup of tea or something warm, and let's step together into a slower world, where the days pass gently and small creatures live simple, beautiful lives beneath the trees. The turning of the birch hollow, in the quiet folds of early spring, when the woods still held the chill of winter, but the ground pulsed faintly with new life. The forest began to stir with a kind of sleepy energy. The trees, bare-limbed and silver with frost, watched over the clearing where a small stream trickled, its surface rippling with the reflections of the pale morning sky. A soft mist hung low, wrapping around mossy roots and half-buried stones. By the stream lived a mole, in a tidy burrow lined with scraps of soft moss and bits of old fabric he'd collected from the edges of the nearby meadow. He was a gentle creature, quiet and contemplative, happiest when his paws were deep in the earth. Every morning he would emerge, blinking against the thin light, and walk along the damp bank to check if the frost had melted enough for him to begin patching the cracks near his burrow's entrance. Today, however, something was different. The ground seemed unusually soft beneath his paws, and as he stepped carefully over a clump of snowdrops, he noticed a faint sound, a slow, rhythmic tapping. It wasn't the wind nor the stream. It was deliberate, almost musical. Following the sound, he rounded a small bend where the roots of an old oak arched over the water, forming a sort of natural bridge. There, standing on the far bank, was a woodpecker. His feathers were dark and glossy, catching the light as he tapped his beak against the trunk of a leaning birch. Each strike was sharp and confident, and between them he hummed softly to himself. "Good morning," said the mole in his small, gravelly voice. The woodpecker paused, turning his bright eyes toward him. "Ah, morning to you. You're up early, neighbor." "I heard you tapping," said the mole. It sounded pleasant, almost like you were playing something. The woodpecker chuckled, tilting his head. "Oh, I wouldn't call it playing. Just keeping my beak sharp and my mind busy. But I suppose there's a bit of rhythm in everything, isn't there?" The mole nodded thoughtfully, then squinted up at the birch. "You've chosen a fine tree for it." "Indeed," said the woodpecker, ruffling his feathers proudly. "But I must say, this one's about to go hollow. I might make a home out of it if I can tidy it up." The mole blinked. "You're moving here? If the tree allows it." The woodpecker tapped once more, listening closely to the echo. "Yes, I think it might." They spoke for a while longer about the weather, the thawing stream, and the first signs of green under the snow. The woodpecker, as it turned out, was new to this part of the woods. He'd flown from the southern ridge, where the wind was harsher and the trees too crowded. The mole listened intently, feeling a curious warmth in his chest. He didn't often meet new neighbors, especially ones who could fill the air with music. As the sun rose higher, the frost melted into clear beads that dripped from the moss and stones. The mole invited the woodpecker to share a simple breakfast at his burrow. Nothing fancy, just a bit of baked root mash he'd made the night before and a few berries he'd saved from autumn. They sat by the small opening of the burrow, where the air smelled faintly of damp earth and pine sap. The woodpecker found the meal delightful, though he pecked carefully at the soft mash, as if uncertain how to eat it properly. "This is quite good," he said between bites. "Simple but warm. You make it yourself." "Yes," said the mole, blushing beneath his fur. "It's nothing special, really. On the contrary," the woodpecker said, tapping his beak against the small bowl in approval. "There's something to be said for food that tastes of the soil it comes from." The mole smiled faintly. He wasn't used to compliments. After they finished, the woodpecker stood and stretched his wings. "If you like, you could come by later and help me clear out the birch. It's big enough for two, if one doesn't mind a bit of sawdust." The mole blinked in surprise. "You want help from someone who can't even climb?" "I'd say you're better at groundwork than I am," the woodpecker said, grinning. "Roots, tunnels, dirt, those things are my specialty. Besides, it's more pleasant with company." And so was decided. The rest of the day unfolded quietly. The two worked side by side, one above, tapping and shaping the hollow, the other below, clearing the roots and leveling the soil. Every so often, they'd pause to listen to the gentle chatter of the stream or to admire how the sunlight scattered through the thin branches. By dusk, the air had turned cool again, and a faint smell of wood dust and moss clung to their feathers and fur. The birch, now neatly hollowed, stood as a fine home, airy and warm, with a smooth floor the mole had packed carefully and a small opening the woodpecker had shaped just so. They sat nearby, tired but content. "You know," said the woodpecker, "I think this would do nicely, but it needs something more, a touch of comfort." The mole tilted his head. "Comfort, something to make a home, a chair perhaps, or a bit of decoration." The mole thought for a while, then smiled. "I might have something." He disappeared into his burrow and returned with a small woven mat, an old piece of cloth he'd found years ago and cleaned up. He laid it inside the birch hollow, where the light from the setting sun fell across it in soft gold. "There," he said, "now it's a home." The woodpecker stood at the entrance, watching the last of the light fade behind the trees. "Indeed," he murmured, "it truly is." They stayed there for a while, saying little, until the forest began to hush and the first stars appeared over the misty clearing. The air was cool but gentle, carrying the smell of earth and thawing leaves. And though neither of them said it aloud, both knew that this small moment, the first day of shared work, the simple meal, the quiet companionship, was the beginning of something lasting. By morning, a pale fog rolled through the woods, soft as breath and tinted faintly gold by the sun trying to rise through it. The mist hung low over the stream, curling around the roots of trees and drifting lazily over the birch where the woodpecker and the mole had spent their first evening of quiet friendship. Inside the birch hollow, the air was snug and still, carrying the scent of sap and fresh wood. The mole had brought a few more small comforts in the early hours: a dried leaf to use as a doormat, a few pine cones that could serve as hooks, and a smooth acorn shell filled with beeswax for light. The woodpecker, perched near the doorway, blinked sleepily as the mole arranged everything with methodical care. "Do you ever rest?" the woodpecker murmured, feathers ruffling with amusement. The mole paused mid-step. "Oh, I rest plenty. I just like things to be right. Right meaning tidy? Right meaning peaceful." The woodpecker smiled faintly, turning his gaze toward the mist. "Peaceful I can understand. I've lived in trees where the wind howls day and night. No peace there, only creaking and shaking." "Sounds dreadful," said the mole, setting down a small bundle of dried herbs near the mat. "What brought you here, then?" The woodpecker paused, tapping his beak thoughtfully against the wood. "I think I got tired of flying from one storm to the next. I wanted somewhere I could hear myself think, somewhere I could build without having to leave it behind." The mole nodded slowly. "Then you chose well. The earth doesn't move much." The woodpecker laughed, a soft, fluttering sound. "No, I imagine it doesn't." Outside, the mist began to thin. The forest was waking up now. The chatter of small birds, the rustle of leaves, and the soft patter of thawing frost dripping from the branches. The stream gurgled quietly, winding its way between rocks still slick with moss. The two of them decided to spend the morning gathering what they needed to make the birch hollow truly livable. The mole would handle the ground-level foraging, roots, twigs, dried grass, while the woodpecker would fly a little higher, searching for soft bark, stray feathers, and bits of moss from the treetops. "Meet back by midday," the woodpecker suggested, flapping once to test his wings. The mole nodded, adjusting his small satchel made from woven reed. "By the big oak, yes, the one near the bend in the stream." And with that, they set off, the woodpecker vanishing upward in a flutter of wings, the mole disappearing into the low brush where the dew still clung to every blade of grass. The mole worked steadily through the morning, his paws digging into the cold, forgiving soil. He had a knack for finding things hidden just below the surface. Smooth pebbles, curled roots, even a few wild onions that had survived the frost. As he moved through the undergrowth, he found himself humming a low, rhythmic tune that echoed faintly through the earth. From time to time, he paused to listen. Somewhere above, he could hear the faint tapping of the woodpecker working away, and every now and then, a cheerful whistle as if the bird were calling down to the world below. It was comforting, that sound, steady, reassuring, alive. By the time the sun stood overhead, the mole had gathered quite a load. He made his way toward the oak, where the light filtered down through tangled branches in gentle, shifting beams. The woodpecker was already there, a small pile of moss and feathers beside him, his feathers bright against the gray bark. "Look what I found," said the woodpecker proudly, holding up a twist of fine, pale lichen, soft enough to line the sleeping nook. You'd think the trees grew it just for comfort. The mole set down his own findings. Roots, smooth twigs, a few small stones polished by the stream. "And I found these. Not as pretty, but they'll do for support." "Between us," said the woodpecker, "I think we've the makings of a fine little home." They spent the next few hours arranging everything. The mole shaped the floor and laid out the stones in a tidy semicircle near the entrance, perfect for keeping paws clean before stepping inside. The woodpecker wove moss and lichen together, padding the inner walls and building a cozy perch near the top of the hollow. By late afternoon, the birch no longer looked like an empty tree. It looked lived in, warm, and quietly proud. When they finished, the two sat outside on a flat rock by the stream, letting their tired limbs rest. The air had grown warmer, the sky brushed with the soft orange of early evening. A faint breeze stirred, carrying with it the smell of pine, sap, and damp leaves. The mole reached into his satchel and pulled out something wrapped in a leaf. "I brought lunch." The woodpecker perked up. "Oh, just something simple," said the mole, unwrapping it carefully. Inside were a few pieces of baked root and some crushed chickpeas mixed with chopped wild onions. "It's best warm, but..." The woodpecker pecked gently at a piece, tasting it. His eyes brightened. "This is marvelous. You have a talent for food." The mole shrugged, a little embarrassed. "I just like making things that last, whether it's a burrow, a mat, or a meal." The woodpecker nodded thoughtfully. "Funny thing that. You build from the ground up, and I build from the top down. Yet here we are, meeting in the middle." The mole smiled faintly. "The middle's a good place to be." They lingered there as the sun dipped low, painting the stream with light that shimmered like molten gold. The forest hummed softly around them, a peaceful, living rhythm that neither of them felt the need to interrupt. As dusk fell, the mole looked up at the birch, now glowing faintly under the moon's first light. "You know," he said, "it feels different now, like the tree itself is happier." The woodpecker tilted his head, smiling. "Maybe it is. Maybe trees like to be useful too. Or maybe they just like company." The woodpecker chuckled. "Then it's in good company indeed." They both fell silent after that, watching the stars begin to glimmer faintly through the canopy. The night deepened, filled with the quiet rustling of small creatures and the soft murmur of the stream. The air turned cool again, but neither minded. When at last they went inside, the birch felt perfectly snug. The moss glowed faintly in the dim light of the beeswax candle, the air warm with the scent of wood and earth. The woodpecker settled on his perch, and the mole curled up on the woven mat below. Outside, the forest whispered soft, ancient, alive. "Good night," said the mole sleepily. "Good night, friend," murmured the woodpecker, and for the first time in a long while, both of them slept soundly. The next morning dawned slow and golden, the kind of morning that felt like the forest was stretching itself awake after a long sleep. Sunlight sifted through the birch leaves, newly green now, soft and trembling in the breeze. The stream sparkled under it, running a little faster after last night's brief rain, and the damp air smelled of moss, bark, and clean earth. Inside the birch hollow, the mole was already awake. He was sitting by the entrance, paws clasped, staring out toward the water. He liked this hour best, the hush before the forest was fully awake, when the bird songs were still tentative, like they were practicing. The woodpecker stirred above him, feathers rustling softly. "You're up early again," he mumbled, voice still thick with sleep. The mole smiled faintly. "Old habits. You don't ever just stay in bed and enjoy doing nothing?" "I try," said the mole, "but my mind starts making lists." The woodpecker chuckled, gliding down to the entrance beside him. "Well, then, what's first on the list today?" "I thought I'd start a small garden patch down by the bend in the stream," the mole said, glancing toward the clearing. "It's good soil there. Maybe some roots, maybe herbs if I can find any that survived the frost." The woodpecker tilted his head. "And what will I do while you dig about?" "You could help me find seeds," said the mole, looking up. "You've got the eyes for it. And the wings." The woodpecker's beak curved into a grin. "A fair deal. Ground and sky, working together again." So they set out, the mole with his woven satchel slung across his shoulder, the woodpecker flitting from branch to branch above him. The forest was alive now, the air filled with birdsong and the hum of small insects beginning their day. Every now and then, the woodpecker would swoop down to show the mole something he'd found. A cluster of small red berries, the curled seed of a wildflower, a patch of damp earth where mushrooms were beginning to push through. They worked steadily through the morning, clearing a small patch of ground near the stream and turning the soil until it was soft and dark. The mole's paws were made for this work, and he hummed quietly as he dug, piling stones into neat borders and patting down the edges. The woodpecker, meanwhile, perched on a nearby stump, sorting through their gathered seeds with the seriousness of craftsmen. "These look promising," he said, pushing a small pile toward the mole. "Round ones, root of some sort, I guess. Could be wild turnip," the mole said thoughtfully. "Or ground beet. Beet sounds better." "I agree," said the mole, smiling. They planted the seeds together, working in quiet companionship. The sound of the stream played softly beside them, and every so often a breeze would stir the birch leaves, scattering sunlight like falling coins. When they finished, the mole sat back on his haunches, brushing soil from his fur. "There," he said with quiet satisfaction. "It may not look like much now, but give it time." The woodpecker landed beside him, folding his wings neatly. "Everything good takes time." The mole nodded, then opened his satchel. "Speaking of which, time for breakfast, I think." Inside was a small cloth bundle, neatly tied. The woodpecker leaned closer as the mole unfolded it to reveal slices of roasted parsnip, a bit of nut bread, and 2 small acorn shells filled with crushed berries. "You packed this?" the woodpecker said, impressed. "Last night, before sleep. I always like to have something ready for the morning." The woodpecker whistled softly. "You're as prepared as an ant before winter." The mole smiled. "Better to have food and not need it than need food and not have it." They ate in companionable silence, sharing bites and sips of cool stream water. The sun was higher now, warming the damp earth and drawing up the smell of fresh soil. Across the stream, a few small birds splashed in the shallows, sending ripples across the mirrored surface. After their meal, the woodpecker stretched his wings. "I'll go see if I can find something useful for your garden. A bit of mulch, perhaps, or fallen bark. The forest gives plenty if you know where to look." "Just don't wander too far," said the mole, but he smiled as he said it. The woodpecker dipped his head and took off, wings flashing in the sunlight. The mole watched him disappear among the trees, then turned back to his patch of soil. He pressed a paw into the damp ground, feeling the cool, steady heartbeat of the earth beneath. It was a feeling he never tired of, the quiet promise that everything, given care, would grow. He spent the rest of the morning tending to small details, smoothing the soil, clearing stray pebbles, and marking the rows with short twigs. When the woodpecker returned, he brought a surprise. A bundle of dried moss and a few scraps of bark shaped into a small trough. For watering, he said proudly, if you angle it just so, the stream fills it as it flows. The mole's eyes brightened. That's clever. You've got an eye for engineering. The woodpecker puffed his chest feathers. We birds aren't just about pecking and preening, you know? Together they set the trough in place, watching as the first trickle of water slid into it, glinting like glass in the sunlight. It was simple, but beautiful, the kind of thing that belonged in the woods, made from what was already there. By afternoon, their small garden was finished. They sat together on the bank, legs dangling over the edge, watching the water ripple past. It's funny, said the woodpecker after a while. Back where I came from, I never thought much about the ground. I lived in the branches, slept in the wind. But here, he looked at the dark, rich soil, at the tiny planted seeds. Here it feels like there's something solid beneath it all, something you can hold on to. The mole nodded. The ground remembers. Every root, every drop of rain, it keeps it all. If you listen long enough, it even tells you stories. Stories. The woodpecker smiled. Maybe one day you'll teach me to hear them. Maybe, said the mole, his voice soft and content. If you teach me the songs of the sky in return. The woodpecker laughed, and the sound carried lightly through the trees. They stayed there until the sun began to dip, casting long golden shadows across the stream. The forest grew quieter, the wind softer. When they finally returned to their shared home, the birch hollow glowed with warm evening light. Inside, it smelled of clean air, fresh bark, and a faint hint of berry from their morning meal. The mole stretched, yawning. A good day's work. The woodpecker nodded, tucking his wings. A good day's beginning. They watched as the light faded through the doorway, turning the mist outside to silver. The stream whispered in the distance, steady and calm. And as the forest slipped toward night, two small figures, one of the air, one of the earth, sat quietly beneath the birch, knowing that in their own simple way, they had made something beautiful together. The following morning brought a steady drizzle, the kind that softened every sound and left the world hushed under a veil of rain. Droplets clung to the birch leaves and rolled lazily down to the moss below. The stream had swollen overnight, now running fast and full, its edges frothing against the rocks. Inside the birch hollow, it was warm and dim. The woodpecker was perched near the doorway, preening the rain from his feathers, while the mole sat close to the small beeswax candle, mending a woven basket. The rhythmic patter of rain above created a soothing background hum that made conversation drift slowly, like the current outside. You know, said the woodpecker, glancing out toward the gray forest, I never used to like the rain. Couldn't work, couldn't fly far, couldn't even sleep with all the dripping. The mole smiled faintly. And now, the woodpecker tapped his beak thoughtfully. Now it sounds like company. The mole nodded, continuing to weave. It's the forest talking in its way. The two sat in comfortable silence for a while longer. The woodpecker dozed with one eye half open, while the mole finished his work and set the basket aside. The hollow smelled faintly of damp bark and wax, but it was cozy in a way that only a rainy day could make it. By mid-morning, the rain had eased into a soft mist. The woodpecker fluttered to the doorway and looked out. The stream's risen quite a bit, he called. We'd better check your garden before it floods. The mole joined him, tugging on a little hood of woven reeds to keep the drizzle off. Together they stepped into the quiet, dripping world. The air was cool and heavy with the scent of wet leaves. When they reached the garden, they found it mostly unharmed, though the stream had crept close enough to nibble at the edge of the soil. A few twigs marking the rows had floated loose. The mole crouched low, patting the damp earth. No real harm done, he said with relief. But it's a good reminder not to plant too close to the water. The woodpecker landed beside him. Nature's lessons always come quickly. They worked together to shore up the edge of the garden with small stones and bits of bark, forming a neat little border. The woodpecker flew back and forth, carrying twigs in his beak, while the mole packed them into the soil. It was muddy work, and soon both were speckled with damp earth. By the time the last stone was placed, the clouds had begun to lift. A faint sunlight filtered through, turning the mist to gold. The forest shimmered as if dusted with light. The mole straightened, stretching his back. There, that should keep it safe for now. Look at us, the woodpecker said with mock pride. Engineers of the forest. Gardeners, perhaps, the mole said, smiling. They laughed softly, and for a moment the forest seemed to join them. The trickle of water, the distant call of a jay, the sigh of wind through damp leaves. As they turned to head back to the birch, a sound made them pause, a faint rustling from behind a clump of bracken. It was quick and hesitant, the sort of movement that belonged to something small but cautious. The woodpecker tilted his head. Did you hear that? Yes, whispered the mole. Something's watching. A few seconds later, the leaves parted, and out stepped a hedgehog. His spines were damp and slightly matted from the rain, and he looked rather flustered, as though the forest itself had given him a bit of a chase. "Oh," he said, blinking at them. "Terribly sorry. Didn't mean to startle you." The mole smiled kindly. "No harm done. Are you all right?" "Quite," said the hedgehog, though his tone was less certain than his words. "Well, mostly. The rain rather washed out my home. I've been trying to find higher ground, and I suppose I lost my bearings." The woodpecker hopped closer, studying him. "You live near here?" "Just beyond a ridge," the hedgehog said, gesturing vaguely with one paw. "Or I did. The burrow's halfway, full of water now. I'll have to find somewhere dry before nightfall." The mole frowned sympathetically. "You can't stay in the open, not while the ground's this wet." The woodpecker nodded. "Come with us. The birch has room, and it's dry inside." The hedgehog blinked in surprise. "You'd share your home with a stranger?" The mole smiled gently. "There are no strangers in a forest this small," the woodpecker added, "and besides, it's warmer with company." The hedgehog hesitated only a moment before nodding gratefully. "You're very kind. I'd be happy to repay the favor however I can." "Let's get you out of the wet first," said the mole. They led him back through the dripping trees, taking care to avoid the slick roots and muddy patches. When they reached the birch, the woodpecker flew ahead to light the beeswax candle while the mole and hedgehog shook off the rain. Inside, the hedgehog looked around with wonder. "It's beautiful," he said softly. "So tidy and warm. I've never seen a home built half in air and half in earth before." The woodpecker beamed. "It's a work in progress, but it's ours." The mole fetched a small cloth to dry him off, and then set about preparing a bit of food, some baked root mash, and a few pieces of nut bread. The hedgehog accepted gratefully, eating with quiet delight. "You're welcome to stay until the ground dries," said the mole as they ate. "Thank you," the hedgehog replied. "I think the rain will have ruined more than just my burrow. The whole lower ridge was soggy when I left." "Then we'll help you rebuild when the sun's out again," said the woodpecker matter-of-factly. The hedgehog's eyes widened. "You do that for me?" The mole looked up from his bowl. "Of course. The forest looks after its own." For the first time that day, the hedgehog smiled. It was a shy, tired smile, but it carried warmth all the same. The next day dawned clear and crisp. The air was washed clean, and the sunlight danced across the leaves like liquid gold. The stream still ran high, but the worst had passed. Birds sang with renewed vigor, and the scent of wet earth hung sweet and heavy in the air. The mole, the woodpecker, and the hedgehog stood outside the birch, surveying the damage the rain had done. The hedgehog's burrow was indeed in poor shape, half collapsed, the roof sagging and the floor a pool of muddy water. "It'll take some doing," said the mole, "but it can be saved." The woodpecker nodded. "You work the ground, I'll gather materials." The hedgehog looked at them both, touched. "You don't have to," but the mole interrupted softly. "We know." And that was that. They spent the day rebuilding. The woodpecker fetched twigs and dry bark from the upper branches. The mole reinforced the tunnel walls with pebbles and packed earth, and the hedgehog rolled dry leaves into tight bundles for bedding. By afternoon, the new burrow was sturdier than before, lined with moss and reinforced with bark to keep the rain from seeping in again. When they finished, they stood together admiring their work, muddy but proud. "It's perfect," said the hedgehog, eyes shining. "Better than it ever was. I don't know how to thank you." The mole shook his head. "No thanks needed. Just come by now and then. We'll have tea by the stream when the garden's grown." The woodpecker added with a wink, "And maybe you can bring some of those berries I saw near your ridge." The hedgehog laughed, nodding eagerly. "It's a deal." The three of them sat on a sun-warmed rock, sharing the last of the nut bread as the forest around them glowed with evening light. The air was calm, the world peaceful again after the storm. It was, the mole thought as he looked out over the glittering stream, exactly the kind of day that made the hard work worth it, the kind that reminded him why he loved the quiet life of the woods. By the time spring fully settled into the valley, the forest had awakened in all its layered brilliance. The once muted greens had become deep and vibrant, the air filled with the hum of insects and the sweet scent of blooming clover. The stream, now gentle again, wound through the trees like a ribbon of glass, its surface flashing with sunlight where the canopy broke. The birch hollow had changed too. The woodpecker and the mole, with the help of their new friend, the hedgehog, had transformed it into something resembling a true home. Not just a place to shelter from the weather, but a space that breathed with the rhythm of their shared days. The morning began with birdsong. The woodpecker was already up, tapping softly at a nearby log, not to forage, but simply because he liked the sound of it. The mole emerged from his nook beneath the roots, brushing soil from his fur, and found the hedgehog sitting outside with a small wooden bowl full of freshly picked berries. "Good morning," said the hedgehog, his voice as soft as the breeze. "I thought we might try these with your oatcakes." The mole smiled. "That sounds wonderful. Let's wake our musician." The woodpecker looked up from his rhythmic tapping, pretending to frown. "You make it sound like I'm lazy." "Not lazy," said the mole. "Just dramatic." The woodpecker grinned. "That's better." They all laughed quietly together, the sound mingling with the forest's gentle chatter. Breakfast was simple but pleasant. Warm oatcakes cooked over a small stone hearth, topped with the berries the hedgehog had gathered. They ate while watching the sunlight creep through the ferns, each moment unhurried and easy. Afterward, they set to work in the garden. The little plot by the stream had flourished since the rains. Rows of sprouts stood proudly in the damp soil, their leaves trembling in the morning air. The mole tended to them carefully, whispering encouragement as he brushed dirt from their stems. The woodpecker gathered fallen twigs to build a tiny trellis for the beans, while the hedgehog fetched water from the stream, carrying it in a hollowed gourd. It was quiet work, but filled with the kind of companionship that needed no talking. Every rustle and chirp around them seemed to blend into their rhythm. At one point, the hedgehog paused to stretch his paws. "You know," he said, "I used to think living alone was the best way to keep life simple. No mess, no noise, no surprises. But I think I was just lonely." The mole straightened from his planting, wiping his paws on his apron of bark fiber. "Solitude can be peaceful," he said, "but only if you have others to return to." The woodpecker landed beside them, carrying a sprig of mint in his beak, and someone to share the garden with when it grows. They planted that mint together, right near the edge of the water. The scent rose sweet and cool, drifting on the warm air. As the sun climbed higher, they worked until their shadows grew short, then rested under the birch with cups of herbal tea. The forest shimmered in the afternoon light, every leaf alive with color and sound. The hedgehog took a long sip and sighed contentedly. "Do you ever think," he asked, "that we'll run out of things to do?" The woodpecker shook his head. "Never. The forest always finds something new to teach us. One day it's mending a garden, the next it's learning to keep the rain out. And some days, the mole added, it teaches us to rest. The three of them sat quietly after that, just listening. The wind through the branches, the distant bubbling of the stream, the hum of bees weaving between flowers. The world, for that moment, felt perfectly balanced. A few evenings later, the hedgehog returned from a walk with a curious look on his face. I met someone new by the old oak path, he said, setting down his basket. A rabbit. Said she's looking for a place to trade herbs. The woodpecker perked up. Trade? Yes, said the hedgehog. She's gathered all sorts, thyme, valerian, wild chamomile. She asked if we had vegetables to spare. The mole rubbed his chin thoughtfully. We could trade her some of the radishes. They've grown fast this season. And so, the next morning, the three of them packed a small bundle of their best radishes and set out along the oak path. The trail wound gently upward, lined with new leaves and patches of wildflowers. When they reached the clearing, they found a rabbit waiting, a bright-eyed creature with long ears and a woven satchel full of herbs. Ah, she said, smiling as they approached. You must be the gardeners from the birch hollow. I've heard the wrens mention you. The mole bowed slightly. We're honored. I'm Mole. This is Woodpecker and Hedgehog. The rabbit nodded. Lena, she said, I've been hoping to meet you. Your vegetables are said to be the sweetest in this part of the forest. Woodpecker puffed out his chest playfully. That's all thanks to Mole. He talks to the soil more than anyone I know. Lena chuckled, trading her herbs for their radishes. The exchange was simple, but carried the unspoken warmth of neighborly trust. Afterward, she invited them to share some herbal tea in her burrow, a cozy, root-lined den filled with drying bundles of plants that perfumed the air. The mole examined a sprig of lavender hanging near the ceiling. You have a gift for this, he said. I suppose we all have our trades, she replied. You tend the soil, I tend the healing it offers. The hedgehog smiled softly. Maybe we could help one another. A shared harvest between us. Lena's ears perked. I like that very much. By the time they left her burrow, the sky was tinged with gold. The forest stretched out before them, vast and alive, full of quiet connections waiting to be discovered. Back at the birch, as dusk settled in, the three friends lit their small candle. Its flame flickered gently, casting shadows on the curved walls. The mole sat by the entrance, watching fireflies rise over the stream. It's strange, he murmured, how quickly life can fill up once you start letting it. The woodpecker looked up from his perch. You mean with friends? The mole nodded. And with purpose? The hedgehog smiled, leaning back against the smooth bark. I think the two are the same. They sat in silence as the candle burned low, the forest around them alive with the sounds of night. A soft breeze stirred the leaves, carrying with it the faint, sweet scent of mint from the garden below. It wasn't grand adventure, nor anything that would ever be told beyond teach. The first signs of autumn came quietly. One morning, the hedgehog stepped outside the birch hollow and found the air touched with a faint chill, the kind that slipped between the leaves and made the dew cling a little longer. The forest still hummed with life, but the light had changed, softer, lower, painting the moss in shades of gold. Down by the stream, the mole was already at work, pulling up the last of the late beans. The vines had grown wild over the summer, wrapping around sticks and spilling into the grass. The woodpecker perched above him, sorting through a small pile of twigs and seed pods. Feels different today, the mole said, breaking the damp soil with his paws. The woodpecker tilted his head. Different how? Like the forest is breathing out after a long summer, the mole said. Listen. They both paused. Somewhere in the distance, a breeze moved through the birch leaves like soft rain, carrying with it the faint rustle of drying grass. The woodpecker nodded. You're right. Even the air smells quieter. The hedgehog arrived with a small basket, filled with what few berries still clung to the brambles. It's the season turning, he said. The forest always slows down around this time, like it's thinking before it sleeps. He crouched beside them, helping gather what remained of the harvest. The three worked in silence for a while, each absorbed in the rhythm of it. The pull of roots, the rustle of leaves, the hum of distant insects. By midday, the garden was cleared. What was once a tangle of green had become neat rows of dark, rich soil. They stacked the beans, sorted the carrots, and washed the turnips in the stream until the water shimmered with mud and sunlight. The mole leaned back, wiping his brow. I think we've done well for the season. The hedgehog smiled, enough to fill the storeroom twice over. Then we'll need to build another shelf, said the woodpecker, fluttering his wings. And perhaps one for preserves. I've been thinking we could dry some of the herbs from Lena's trade. The mole looked amused. You've turned into quite the housekeeper. Practical, the woodpecker corrected. Not housekeeping, planning. The hedgehog chuckled. Call it what you like, it's still useful. That afternoon, they began preparations for the coming months. The mole reinforced the walls of the hollow with small stones, packing them tightly with clay. The woodpecker sealed cracks in the ceiling with soft resin and dried moss, while the hedgehog sorted their stores into neat piles, roots and grains on one side, herbs and teas on the other. Outside, the light dimmed earlier now, and a soft wind carried leaves down in lazy spirals. The forest took on a deep, golden tone, every tree aglow as if lit from within. A few days later, Lena the rabbit arrived again, carrying a small bundle wrapped in birch bark. I've brought you something, she said, smiling as they met her at the garden. Inside the bundle were sprigs of dried thyme, chamomile, and a small pouch of something fragrant and dark. For sleeping, she explained, a mix of valerian and lavender. The nights grow longer now. You'll want your rest. The hedgehog accepted it with both paws. Thank you, Lena. You always seem to know what's needed. The rabbit shrugged modestly. The forest provides if you listen. They shared tea together on the stone bench by the stream, talking quietly while the wind rippled the water's surface. The conversation wandered easily from the best ways to store roots to how the foxes were migrating south earlier this year. When the sun began to set, Lena rose to go. I'll see you in a few weeks, she said. There's talk of a new neighbor near the ridge. A deer, they say, come down from the hills. Another neighbor, the woodpecker mused. Seems our little corner of the forest is growing. The mole smiled softly. That's not such a bad thing. After she left, they sat for a long time watching the dusk settle over the water. The scent of mint and thyme lingered in the air, mingling with the first smoke of autumn fires somewhere far away. The following morning was colder still. The birch leaves had begun to fall in earnest, scattering the forest floor with gold and pale brown. Mist rolled low over the stream, curling around the stones like soft wool. The mole woke early, feeling the cold seep into his fur. He lit the small hearth, coaxing the flames until they glowed steady and warm. The hedgehog stirred soon after, still half asleep, and shuffled toward the scent of oats cooking over the fire. Morning already? He murmured. Afraid so, said the mole, stirring the pot. We'll need to start on firewood soon. The woodpecker emerged from his perch, stretching his wings. There's plenty of fallen branches by the ridge, he said. I'll go after breakfast. They ate together quietly, savoring the warmth of the porridge and the stillness of the morning. Outside, the forest moved in slow rhythm, leaves drifting, water murmuring, a faint cry of geese overhead. After breakfast, they set off together, each with a basket or bundle. The ridge was only a short walk away, but the climb wound gently upward through dense undergrowth and clusters of tall, thin birches. When they reached the top, the view opened wide. The valley spread below them, a quilt of trees and fields, all brushed with the early colors of fall. The woodpecker clicked his beak in appreciation. You can see half the forest from here. The mole nodded. It feels bigger than I remember. Maybe it's us who've changed, said the hedgehog. We've learned to see it properly. They gathered branches, careful to take only what had fallen naturally. The air smelled of pine and damp bark, and the quiet was deep enough to hear the small sounds of their work. The snap of twigs, the rustle of dry grass, the woodpecker's occasional hum as he stacked the bundles. When their baskets were full, they rested on a sunlit rock overlooking the valley. The hedgehog pulled a small cloth from his satchel, unfolding slices of roasted root and a bit of wild honey. Lunch, he said cheerfully. They ate in contented silence, the kind that comes only after honest work. Below, the forest shimmered with light, and a single hawk circled high above the treetops. The mole closed his eyes for a moment, listening. There's something peaceful about this height, he said, like the world is far away, but still close enough to reach. The woodpecker leaned back against the rock. It's the kind of place you'd want to remember in winter. And we will, said the hedgehog softly. It'll be waiting for us when spring returns. As they packed their things and began the walk back, the first real gusts of cold wind swept through the ridge. Leaves whirled around them, bright as embers against the sky. The forest, it seemed, was beginning its long, slow preparation for rest, and so were they. When they returned to the birch hollow that evening, the hearth fire glowed warmly, casting soft light across their newly stocked shelves. The scent of wood smoke mingled with lavender from Lena's herbs. They sat together, the quiet hum of the forest outside fading into the background. The mole spoke first, his voice low and thoughtful. We've done well this year, more than I expected. The hedgehog nodded. Because we did it together. The woodpecker smiled. Then I suppose we'll do the same next year, and every year after that. Outside, the wind whispered through the branches, carrying with it the soft promise of the coming frost. Inside, the friends sat close, warm and content, the heart of the forest beating gently around them. The end. Thank you for wandering through the woods with me. If you'd like to return for more quiet stories and soft moments, don't forget to follow the trail back. Like, subscribe, and I'll meet you again under the green canopy soon.